This is Dave Chappelle like we've never seen him before. If you think his funny sketches are good, wait until you get a load of this. There have been plenty of cases where Dave talked about police brutality. It is a topic that can get pretty dark even to this day, but you don't usually see him deflating someone's ego because things got out of hand. You see, Chappelle knows perfectly well that comedy is one of the last safety valves for us to say whatever we want and get away with it. He never seems to back down when he jokes about sensitive topics. He is a clever guy. He knows that the way to do it is not to give in to pressure, because quite frankly, anyone who feels offended has no power at all outside of Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. Kenny DeForest posted something on Twitter, now X, that immediately went viral. My coolest night of comedy was when Chappelle dropped by at Comedy at the Knit, when at Mr. Will Miles, at The Clark Jones, and I was still hosting. We were in the back room and he was in town supporting Kevin Hart hosting SNL. I text at Joelle Nicole like, any chance Dave wants to go up? No one expected Dave Chappelle to pop up at one of DeForest's shows at the Knit in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Will Miles, Clark Jones, and DeForest was still hosting when Dave appeared. Everyone expected a standard set, but they got something a million times better. What they ended up with was a gut-wrenching story on Black history and the police, and a white woman who thought she could get away with anything. So here's how it all started. When the host planned the show, they thought Dave might come. No one actually told them he would be there. After all, he is a busy man, and without a confirmation, the host figured they would proceed as initially planned. Then they saw Dave sneaking in like a boxer with the hood over his head. The hosts were in the green room joking, drinking, and smoking. Everything went perfectly from there. Dave knew exactly what to say and how to say it. Every topic that came out, he had a perfect story to back it up. The audience loved him. He was poking the crowd for headlines to talk about. Someone shouted something and boom, he's got a killer joke ready. He instantly nailed every single topic. And keep in mind, this was just days after the cop who choked Eric Garner to death in Staten Island, yeah, straight up murder, wasn't indicted by the grand jury. Then about 15 to 20 minutes into his set, Dave asked the audience what else they wanted him to talk about. Someone yelled police brutality. He pauses, looks around and goes, "You really want to do this? Okay." He chugged his Tecate and put it down on the side. The crowd, by the way, was a mix of everything. White, black, brown, everyone. And they were loving it. The atmosphere was good. Hannibal Buress was the one who started the show, so it always had a strong black following. But since it's in Williamsburg, you'd also find hipsters and people from every corner of the globe. Even tourists come here just to show up for the bar show. All was fine until Dave's stories got super deep. So Dave started to talk about the death of Eric Garner, how he watched it all on camera. Another black man getting murdered in cold blood. This made him feel terrified for his children. Eric died in a chokehold, and just a couple of hours after the video was released, it sparked outrage around the country. It was complete mayhem. The raw footage shows Garner's interaction with the police over allegedly selling loose, untaxed cigarettes on Staten Island, New York. The video ends with Garner lying face down on the sidewalk. The 400-pound man is put in a chokehold and can be heard pleading for his life. He says, "I can't breathe," and the cops proceed to hold him down until he passes out. The man was killed. The incident happened on July 17, 2014. It was one of the very first videos to capture what happens to be a minor problem with officers that quickly spirals out of control. It became a catalyst for the fight against police brutality. People were protesting everywhere around the city. They were outraged and had the right to be so. The death was ruled a homicide by Dr. Floriana Persicino, a senior medical examiner for New York City. In the report, we can see that not only did the autopsy confirm the ruling, but the video was also used as a key piece of evidence, both of which indicated that Garner was placed in an illegal chokehold and died as a result. It triggered a serious reaction, more precisely an asthma attack, which led to his death. Nevertheless, the grand jury declined to indict Pantaleo, which further infuriated the public. NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau launched its own investigation and declared that the chokehold was administered and recommended charges. But these findings were not published, which made the case last for years. Erica, Garner's eldest daughter, became an activist. She started fighting for her father, but unfortunately she died of a heart attack in 2017. She was 27. As time went on, his family continued to fight for justice. Dave said, "I thought body cams would help, but what good is video evidence if y'all don't care?" Then something happened that Dave didn't see coming. No one expected it really. This clearly privileged white girl who was wearing a wide-brimmed felt hat just shouted out of nowhere, "Life's hard, sorry about it," and the whole room just deflated. You could hear everyone there gasping in pure disbelief. They couldn't believe what came out of that woman's mouth. Dave stared at her, right in the eyes. He goes, "What did you just say?" And the woman repeated the whole thing without a shred of doubt. Something just clicked in his mind right there and then. He gave the entire crowd a history lesson on black people and the police. He covered everything from slave patrols to Rodney King, the Watts riots, Emmett Till, Black Wall Street, you name it. Then he also brought up Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, and John Crawford III. The story behind these three is very important. Trayvon was 17 when he got shot and killed because he was black. He had no criminal record prior to the shooting, and the man responsible was set free. The whole case became a national story and social media phenomenon. The guard watch, Zimmerman was allowed to patrol the streets. Because of the spree of robberies and burglaries happening in the area, the guard carried a firearm. He would then call the police many times to report suspicious people, all of whom were black men. When he saw Trayvon, he immediately considered him a threat, although the young man did nothing to break the law. He continued to pursue the teenager, watching him like a hawk, until he confronted and shot the unarmed man in the chest, killing him on the spot. Michael Brown was 18 when he died. He was unarmed and shot 6 times by the police until he fell to the ground. The officer fired a total of 12 bullets, like some kind of target practice. The cops were the ones who started the whole charade and grabbed Michael by the neck through the car window. They threatened and then shot him. He didn't deserve to die like that. No one deserves that. Now, if you don't know who John Crawford III is, then this should ring a bell. This young man was a father of 2. In 2014, he was out shopping at Walmart. There, he chose the BB pellet air rifle from the toy section and wanted to buy it. As he was browsing some other goods, he was casually talking with his girlfriend on the phone. Because he carried this gun, someone called the police and said that he was an armed threat. When the police got there, they shot him on the spot. He was carrying a toy gun from the store and still ended up dead. The officer came in and didn't even bother to tell the man to drop the weapon. He just shot him dead. The security footage is right there for all to see. It is awful and downright mind-blowing. Then Dave told the crowd his own story. Some time ago, he got pulled over by the cops in rural Ohio. It happened before the Crawford shooting, but after Ferguson, which means there was a lot of racial tension piling up. Dave said, "I might be white on paper, but I'm still black, so I'm nervous." Dave said, "The cop approaches and he can tell I'm nervous. I have both my hands on the wheel and I say, 'Officer, my license and registration is in the glove box. I'm going to reach for them now. I promise I am not armed.' I could tell the officer was offended that I was nervous. When the cop took a good look at him, he said, 'I know who you are, Dave Chappelle.' So Dave jokingly replied with, 'So why do you need my license and registration?' He gets off with just a warning. Want to know a plot twist? That same police officer went on to kill John Crawford III. Here's what Dave had to say about that. 'I shouldn't have to be Dave Chappelle to survive police encounters.' This is absolutely true. Let's be fair. It isn't just law enforcement. Politicians, the wealthy and famous get treated differently. It is human nature to try and protect those you care about, especially if you show some kind of favoritism." Then Dave continued with his story. This time it was about one of his best friends from South Africa. He asked him what it was like in South Africa right before apartheid ended. His friend said that it was absolute chaos. Car bombs, riots, you name it. But what really made a difference was the tipping point. When enough people cared, it reached critical mass. And at that point, there was no turning back. The people had the momentum and the apartheid fell. So Dave said, "Critical mass, that's what we need to hit. Once enough of you care, there will be nothing they can do to stop the change." This really hit the audience. Everyone was silent. They felt it. Right there, they knew exactly what he was talking about. He was talking about the power of the people, the power that all of us have but are too afraid to use it, the power that we always had, but we still remain divided. If only we could work together to bring meaningful change, to turn the world upside down, for the better, of course. You see, the term critical mass comes from nuclear physics. It is used to describe the smallest mass of material that will start a chain reaction in a nuclear bomb or reactor. In a social context, He is referring to the threshold at which a good amount of people adopt an idea or behavior and help create a self-sustaining movement. Once we reach that tipping point, there is no going back. The momentum becomes unstoppable. The key element is numbers. It is the same principle as a vote, except that you are not using it to vote, but to communicate that the people are no longer under the control of those in power. We need a meaningful social transformation. This can be achieved not through the actions of a few, but through the collective efforts of many. More people need to be mobilized, motivated, and informed to challenge and overturn the current system of social bias and police injustice. To get there, we need to spread awareness. The movements need to resonate with the whole population. In the meantime, there's a high chance they are going to be demonized by the mainstream media and those in power. But consistency and effort will pay off. Even local protests, like a pollution event or a company failure, can turn into a massive case where people want higher wages to work at harder jobs or cleaner environments. So it is not only numbers that can make a change, but influence as well. This can be really powerful, particularly when we are willing to make that change. Critical mass has literally reshaped our world. We can see plenty of examples throughout history, like the civil rights movement in the US, the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa, and now the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm fairly certain critical mass also helped stop the Vietnam War. All of them had a major role to play. The civil rights movement reached a critical mass when both white and black people started recognizing the benefits of ending segregation once and for all and treating black people as humans. Without that massive support, it would have been impossible to cause drastic changes. When Chappelle said that people need to care, he meant that people need empathy and awareness to achieve critical mass. Awareness means understanding the issues at hand, while empathy means developing a close emotional connection to those affected by these social problems. Empathy is important because it gives us the ability to feel and understand the other person's emotions. It can change a person. Cognitive empathy, on the other hand, is a skill. It is learned knowledge and understanding of other people's emotions, actions, and the proper way to react to them. It is hard to understand others when you haven't lived in their shoes. A community that is unable to feel empathy is one that can be highly toxic, especially if they have ingrained hatred toward a minority, the kind of hatred that has been passed on from generation to generation. When Chappelle talks about care, this is what he means. The more people become aware and empathetic, the more likely they are to take action, whether through advocacy, protest, or any other engagement. In today's era, it is a lot easier to achieve critical mass, mainly with the exposure we get through social media. This viral nature makes it that much easier to ensure that things don't stay hidden and that collective outrage turns into collective action. Now, the reason why this speech was so important is because Chappelle did it at a time when we saw a lot of black people getting murdered for no reason. There was a lot of unrest and a need for something big to happen. It was a different kind of speech, one that's worth remembering. But it is not over yet. When the show ended and all the hosts went to the green room, Joelle Johnson came back and said, "That dumbass white girl wanted to talk to you, but I told her you were busy." Dave said, "No, bring her back." So Johnson leaves and this white woman comes in. This time she is accompanied by her friend. You see, back on the show, Dave literally put the white girl in her place. He slammed her with logic and reason. Absolutely hilarious, but also tasteful. Not only did he teach her a valuable lesson, but he also showed her that while the country may be safer for white citizens, it is nowhere near that for anyone who is black. Obviously, it struck a chord with her. The woman decided to speak out first. She continued, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what I said, and thank you for educating me. I was ignorant before, but I want you to know I learned from you tonight, and I won't say things like that anymore." Dave responded, "You're okay. That's all we can ask. Know better, do better. I want to thank you for hearing me and listening. That's your role, and now you know. Now you're part of that critical mass we talked about. And next time you hear a friend say some ignorant shit like you said, it's your job to correct them and share with them what you learned tonight. Then you're no longer part of the problem, you're part of the solution." She started crying and he gave her a hug. He then asked her, "Do you want a picture?" She was over the moon. She and her friend took a picture and Dave just sent them on their way. Absolutely brilliant. He showed exactly how to respond to people by informing them without antagonizing them. And shout out to the white girl who allowed herself to be educated. She went there to apologize, stating that she learned her lesson. More people should act this way. This is a man who has the power to change anyone. He literally inspired a room with more than 200 people. They would later become part of the solution that our society so desperately needs. And he wasn't even preparing to make it happen. He just did it because he can. He completely reprogrammed the mind of a privileged white girl who grew up in a privileged white world. The point is, it doesn't matter where you come from or what you've been exposed to. What matters is that everyone can change, even those you least expect them to. And when people come close like this to famous figures who educate, it becomes that much easier to create a critical mass and push for change. What we need are people just like Dave who can educate the masses. People who know exactly how to speak, what to say, and when to say it. It's easy to wonder if someone with as much fame and influence as Dave can actually teach people how to be nice to everyone else, regardless of skin color. Most people think that when you are supposed to approach someone who has an ignorant viewpoint, the first thing to do would be to completely insult or belittle them. But what if people took Dave's initiative and tried to rehabilitate others without actually trolling them or being soft? Just use straight facts. Of course, not everyone is as good of a speaker as Dave is. He is a very intelligent individual who can break down important issues in a very relatable way. It all comes down to action and education, but the kind of education that will make you heard. It's obvious that standard education is not doing us any good. Our current education system has been specifically designed to brush away the harsh realities of history, especially Black history, and make us obedient workers who know there will be consequences when we don't do what we are told. But when we have people like Dave, we can see the possibility of people bringing good to the world. Yes, he is rich, he is privileged, but he has seen it all. And from a Black person's perspective, we can see where he is coming from. He is definitely a genius that deserves to be on top. We need to unlearn racism with an open heart and an open mind. This is not rocket science, but it will take us a long time to get there. Dave didn't break this white woman. He didn't humiliate or insult her. He educated her like a true gentleman. He even accepted her with open arms after the show. But it takes a lot of experience, wisdom, and a good heart to treat people that way. He taught the woman right with facts and calmness. This is true class. This story was told on Twitter back in 2015 by Kenny DeForest, the comedian who was hosting the night. There is no live version of it, but it is definitely one of the most memorable shows Dave made. The thing is, there's also a clip from Joe Rogan's podcast featuring Kevin Hart. Oddly enough, Kevin talks about meeting with Dave that day.
That's some of our favorite stories, though, or someone who comes back. Like Dave Chappelle's a perfect example of that.
I can do I want.
Well, not only that, Dave did it in a legendary way. They offer him all this money to do this Comedy Central show in a different way.
He just talks about how unique and awesome Dave is, how he can just be free and do whatever he wants to do. He doesn't plan anything. He just goes ahead and does it. He can be whoever he wants to be without being tied down to anything. Kevin talks about how he has companies and people to think about, how he is stuck with so many responsibilities and can never turn away from them because of the consequences. He knows how important it is for him to be there. So he said he is jealous of Dave for being who he is. If he needs money, he takes his bike and books a show. It doesn't matter where that show might be. Dave is a product of 2 college professors who taught him great values and encouraged him to pursue his career and be a free thinker. He is this tornado that can shake the nation, make us laugh, and talk about difficult things that plague our society. He is someone who provides the people with a unique perspective without offending anyone. He is a philosopher who can tell good jokes. The point of this video is not just to slam a random Karen, but to learn from Dave. He is building bridges, not walls. Let's dig a little deeper on that, shall we? You see, this is not the first time Dave has talked about police action, and it definitely won't be his last. Remember this one?
That's that whole brutality thing. See, that's common knowledge now. There was a time when only minorities really knew about that. I'm not gonna say white people didn't believe us, but you were a little skeptical. You were a little skeptical. I mean, I don't blame you. And then Newsweek printed it, he knew it was the truth. And then the Newsweek, white people were like, oh my.
At a town hall meeting in Yellow Springs, he entered a debate to talk about aggressive policing. In 2017, officers made national headlines when they arrived at a New Year's Eve party where Chappelle was hanging out. He called the altercation with the officers a huge gaffe. He said he witnessed the whole fiasco. He was there with his kids, friends, and neighbors. Here is what happened. Just 8 minutes after midnight, the officers started breaking up the crowd that came there to celebrate. They were unusually aggressive, and many of the locals approached the officers to ask what was going on. One of those residents was Dave Carlson, who the police later described as drunk, disorderly, and threatening. Carlson, who was black, was reportedly forced to the ground by an officer. In the middle of all that chaos, he managed to get away, but he was later caught and charged with felony obstruction and misdemeanor theft for allegedly taking an officer's taser. The town pretty much agreed with Chappelle that the police overreacted and turned a peaceful party into a huge mess. But not everyone agreed that the officers were racially profiling the people there. Others say that this incident did in fact have racial undertones, and it's not the first time something like this has happened. Here is what Ayanna Madison, a black 16-year-old high school student, told the New York Times. Yeah, I experience this everywhere I go. I've heard stories of this countless times, and it's not going to change until it happens to the rich kids, until it happens to the white kids, until it happens to the kids whose families control the power in the town or the city. Out of the 13,500 people at the time who lived there, 13% are black and 81% are white. Chappelle moved to the neighborhood when he was 14 and came back after he quit the Chappelle show in 2005. Since the incident, the town has organized a bunch of city hall meetings to deal with the problem. They pitched all kinds of ideas, from replacing cops with social workers to offering subsidies for officers to live in town and train them on how to deal with bias. Chappelle said that hiring police officers who were out of town has had a bad impact on the community. They've been racially profiling their suspects the second they got there. Chappelle said, "The police have actually been sensitive to my situation. I know of at least 2 occasions where they protected my own well-being, my personal well-being, unsolicited by me. So I appreciate that. Now we are being policed by what feels like an alien force." He added that it was time to replace the police chief. This was the golden opportunity to make a difference. At a time when Trump reigned supreme, people could show the country that with the control of local politics, it is possible to create a welcoming environment for everyone. Now, this is not the first time Chappelle has impressed us. Dave is someone who stands up against the Hollywood machine. He rejected a $50 million deal when he was at the height of his fame because he didn't like where the show was going. Hollywood tried to destroy him, but not once did he back down.
Dave Chappelle was decapitated in front of us. They called him Pilot Boy because he had 19 pilots in Hollywood and everybody passed on him and said his show wasn't worth it. Then when he made $500 million, they said even though his contract said he should get half of it, they said he made too much for the contract to be valid, so we'll offer you 10% of what you made. You mean he made $500 million and they offered him 50? Yes. And he said, what do you think my fans are gonna say when they find out you offered me 10% of what I made you? And they said, your fans will believe that you're a crazy crackhead by the time you get home. He got on a flight in LA, and by the time he got to Ohio, it was so.
He went back to Africa, the motherland, to reconnect to his humanity. He comes back and doesn't go crazy because of fame. No, he still holds his ground, as honorable as ever, never selling his dignity, and continues to amaze people with all his lessons. He has complete autonomy to run his shows however he wants. His timing, his pace, and delivery are excellent. He is a modern-day philosopher who conveys his message through humor. He finds humor in things that our society makes us believe that jokes like these shouldn't be funny. In the 846 Netflix special, you can hear how angry and emotional Dave can be. When he talked about George Floyd, he said that America was being punished for the way the country has been mistreating black people.
This man kneeled on a man's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Can you imagine that? What are you signifying? That you can kneel on a man's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds and feel like you wouldn't get the wrath of God.
Dave said that he was at a loss for words about the whole incident. He was absolutely heartbroken, but he offered zero sympathy for the cops involved, and he didn't hold back. The whole time, the cops had their hands in their pockets. Since this was one of the first events to be organized after the COVID lockdown, the audience had to wear masks and sit in pairs, 6 feet away from others. Chappelle pointed out that some pundits were asking where celebrities stand on the Black Lives Matter movement and why so many of them have stayed silent. Here is what Dave said. Do we give a f what Ja Rule thinks? This is the streets talking for themselves. They don't need me right now. Don't think my silence is complacent. The Netflix special, which lasted for almost 30 minutes, wrapped up with the single Nobody Speak. It was playing over still images and news footage of BLM protests. It came with a note from Dave that said, normally I wouldn't show you something so unrefined. I hope you understand. In the United States, we've seen a fair share of protests that have accomplished an actual goal larger than a local issue. These protests can be used to make a powerful statement and encourage people who pass by to join. And the fact that we can freely protest as long as we establish certain boundaries, democracy will never die. It is a good feeling to stand alongside other people who share your beliefs. However, I do not believe that looting and rioting is the way to go. It hasn't accomplished anything good, and in almost every case, it ends up badly. It causes damage and massive losses for the community and often has serious consequences for those involved. Suffering only causes more death and destruction, not change. So no, violence is not the way. Education, awareness, and empathy is. What we need is a community we can depend on, a social structure that is designed to be supportive of all minorities, a society that demonstrates a commitment to its people and policies that support everyone involved, both rich and poor. As you can see, Chappelle has a knack for this thing. He is also one of the rare comedians who can whip up an entire commentary on the fly and come up with a worthy lesson that can change even the most difficult people. He has so much integrity, and now that he has become older, he has become that much wiser and wealthier in so many different ways. The way he talks and expresses himself is truly genuine. He is so calm, well-spoken, and capable of dealing with complex people in different situations. This deserves some praise. When he talked about critical mass, he talked about the truth. We need a social change, one that comes with collective action, awareness, and empathy. One that can challenge the norms and transform the entire system. The second we, as a society, reach that critical mass, we can become more motivated to do real good. This is not just possible, but inevitable. We need to stay committed, not just for our own sake, but for the future generations. That's because even the smallest contribution to justice can leave a big impact in the years to come. What do you think about Chappelle's lecture to this white lady? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Another topic we need to talk about as a community is why do we keep killing each other? The video on the screen dives deep into this very topic. Click on it now to watch. We'll see you over there.